7th, 2022 City of Oshkosh Plan Commission meeting. We are glad that you can join us. I have a few housekeeping items to go over before we begin. Please turn off or silence all of your communication devices. When there is an agenda item that includes a public hearing, please understand that the applicant will be allowed to speak first. After the applicant finishes, the public will be asked to speak. When called upon to speak, please approach the podium and state your name and address for the public record. You will have one opportunity per agenda item to speak unless a Plan Commission member requires clarification or wishes to ask you a question. After the public finishes speaking, the applicant will be asked if they have a final statement for the Plan Commission, and then the Commission will take action on that agenda item. Thank you for your understanding. Now on to the agenda. Roll call, please.
Miss Davy?
Here.
Councilmember Ford?
Here.
Mr. Kiefer?
Here.
Mr. Marshall? Miss Prop?
Here.
Miss Shireman?
Here.
Mr. Bowen?
Here.
Mr. Kulabali?
Here.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Here.
Chairman Perry?
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. The next item is the approval of the May 17th, 2022 minutes.
Move to accept as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept it and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, minutes have passed. Item number 1, deferring election of officers to Mark here at my right.
Thank you. So it is the time of year when we do have to have our organizational portion of Plan Commission like we do every year. So we will go through the typical process of asking for nominations for chair and then vice chair afterwards. So I will call 3 times for nominations, depending upon what we have there, then we'll go for the vote. So I call for nominations for chair for Plan Commission.
Nominate Mr. Thomas Perry.
Same thing. Now that he finally learned how to do it, I think we should keep him.
All right. Second call for nominations for chair. Third and final call for nominations for chair. All right. Seeing none, as we only have one candidate, we can just do a voice vote for.
Oh, sorry about that.
Victory alone.
Are we sure we want this guy?
Yeah.
That's how you accept.
Follow your own rules.
I know, I'm trying to turn it off.
All those in favor of Mr. Perry.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. And now I will call for nominations for vice chair.
Move to nominate Justin Mitchell.
Second call for nominations for vice chair. Third and final call for nominations. All right, as we only have one, we can do the voice vote. All those in favor of Mr. Mitchell for vice chair.
Aye.
All right, congratulations to the chair and vice chair. We should be good to go. Mr. Perry, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. On to item 2A. Public hearing, zone change from suburban mixed-use district and SMU to suburban mixed-use district with a planned development overlay, SMU PD, for property located on the south side of West Packer Avenue. Oshkosh Kids Foundation is the owner and applicant. Have there been any site inspections? There are several.
So Prop, Ford, Davy, Meredith, Justin. Did we get everybody?
Mr. Bowen.
Mr. Bowen.
All right, I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Please proceed with your summary.
Thank you. So this is a rezone request. The property is about 3.5 acres in size. It's a vacant parcel located on the south side of Packer Avenue, west of North Main Street. It is currently zoned suburban mixed-use districts, and the surrounding area consists predominantly of commercial and vacant land uses. Here's an aerial view of the subject site. So the applicant is requesting a rezone to add a planned development overlay The applicant has plans submitted for a tiny home village, which is considered a multifamily use and not permitted in the suburban mixed-use district. So the rezone to the PD overlay is intended to allow the applicant to apply for a BSM for the use as well as the site design, and that will be discussed as the following item, which is GDP and SIP. So staff is supportive of the proposed rezone as it will assist development of the site, and it will provide further review of the development plans. So with that, staff recommends approval of the rezone with the findings in your staff report.
Okay, Plan Commission, are there any technical questions to the staff? Once again, any technical questions for the staff? All right, having seen none, I will open the public comment period and request a statement from the applicant. Is the applicant here to make a statement on this zone change?
Will Depius, Board President for Oshkosh Kids Foundation. Happy to take any questions that you have on what we're proposing.
All right, thank you. At this point, I will open the public comment period and request statements from the public. Are there any individuals from the public that would like to speak on this matter?
Yes.
Please approach the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
So my name is Cindy Pischke. I actually live at 1287 Valley Road, Oshkosh, which is in the town of Algoma. However, I'm representing the Oshkosh Kennel Club, which is directly across the street from this proposal. I'd like to start out by saying that I have belonged to the Oshkosh Kennel Club since 1981. I'm also a 43-year veteran social worker for Winnebago County, having retired last year. So I'm well aware of the type of situations that families and what the Children's Foundation is doing. However, I would like to tell you a little bit about the history of the Oshkosh Kennel Club so that you can understand our concerns about this property change. In 1985, we started looking at building a building for the Oshkosh Kennel Club, and we researched a lot of property in Oshkosh and the surrounding areas. We looked at outside the city, we looked at inside the city, and a lot of the properties that we looked at outside the city were properties that were vacant land but surrounded by residential areas. And we felt pretty strongly that that was not where we wanted to have the kennel club, because we have business that includes dog shows and events. We just had a national event at our club building. It brings in a lot of people, and dogs bark. So, we wanted to have an area where we could be in a commercial, industrial type area. We looked around the city of Oshkosh for that and found this property, which we purchased in 1986. The Kennel Club has actually been around Oshkosh since 1963. So we hold a lot of events over the years. Just about every month we have 1 to 2 events that bring not only revenue in regard to people spending money in restaurants, hotels, that sort of thing, but also, coming to our area and buying gas and just supporting our economy. I think we totaled up, we had about 9,000 exhibitors come to Oshkosh last year. We would have never bought this property if we would have intended, or if we would have known that it would have been a residential area or that there would be residences around it. There's one behind us. We've been friends with our neighbors. Lynn's, who had his business for quite a few years now, is being bought by another person. Mrs. Galicia behind us is, someone who has been very familiar with the Kennel Club and is a lover of animals. But we have not wanted to be in a residential area. We wanted to be in an industrial and commercial area. That's why we bought the property. That's why we built the original building, and why we expanded in 2000 to build our bigger building. And we're here to urge the Planning and Zoning Commission to not approve this, because it isn't conducive, it isn't compatible with our area, and we're concerned about that. So I know that there are other Kennel Club members that would like to speak as well and add on to what I have said. So that's about where I'm at right now, just letting you know our concerns. and urging you not to.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to comment at this time? Please approach the podium, state your name and address for our records. Thank you.
I'm Cindy Bonert. I am the president of the Oshkosh Kennel Club. My residence is 3422 Bell Line Road in Amro, but I'm representing Oshkosh Kennel Club at 220 West Packer Ave. As Cindy said, we have been there since 1985. We have done everything we can to always be compatible with the zoning around us and the commercial neighbors that we have. We have, on average, 9,000 exhibitors who come through our doors each year. Many of them have to leave their dogs out in the car just because they like to leave them out there. We're a really closely knit community, the dog training facility, or people are, and we're very concerned with having a residential, 31 residents across the street from us, what that will do to our finances. And the picture that that's going to paint for the security that people are going to feel coming to our events. Almost every dog event that we go to is in a commercial area. So there's not much foot traffic around, so people feel safe with their dogs in their cars, windows open, doors remaining open. I was looking through the plans and what was on the agenda. One of the concerns we have is we've been told that two different things, that first the police were going to be there for security. Then we're told no, there's going to be a room, a building just for the police. To let the children know, the police are good and have a presence there and so forth. And now I read in the proposal that the police are going to be there for added safety. I don't know what is going to be anticipated here that we need to have police there for added safety. So the other item on there that we really question is, in the proposal, it's saying that, the location, because it's close to, several things. And one of them was the Nova Counseling Center. And we were told at the last meeting that the families that will be chosen here will be checked that they can't have any drug addictions or any history of any criminal record, but yet wanting to be close to the Nova Center, which my understanding that is a drug and alcohol abuse center. In the past, we had a very bad incident with somebody from that center, cost us $15,000 and increased our insurance. Somebody who was trying to get there and drove through our garage door. So basically, we are concerned with what this is going to do to our future income and participants that come to our events. The last thing is Packer Ave is heavily traveled. I noticed in the proposal that there had not been a traffic study. That's one thing that helps us, or works with us, I should say, at the Kennel Club. Our events are mainly in the evening and on weekends. But during the week, the traffic on Packer Ave, because of the businesses there, the commercial areas, there is a lot of truck traffic on that road. So I don't know what that means, that traffic study had not been done, but if you would find out that there is a lot of traffic on that road. So as Cindy said, we are opposed to this. We, chose our area and have expanded our club and have been an extremely successful nonprofit. And we just don't want something hindering that. And we really do feel that 31 homes across the street, such as this, with all the added security, will be in effect on us.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals from the public that wish to comment right now? Are there any other individuals from the public that wish to comment? Okay, having seen none, I'm going to close the public comment period. I'm going to ask for a closing statement from the applicant if they choose to give one. I see none, so we will ask the commission for action on this item.
Motion to adopt the recommendations and findings as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, we have been motioned and seconded. Is there any commission discussion on this motion? Mr. Kulbali.
I'd really like to hear the proponent's response to the concern of the street neighbor.
Excuse me, it's very difficult for us to
Oh,
deal with people
okay.
talking to our backs.
All right, I interested in hearing the feedback of the proponent on the concerns of the neighbors across the street. If there been any consultation before, or is that new to the proponent?
Where do I go with this?
We can let him answer.
On the, I guess to answer to the question about Oshkosh City Police participation at the site, that discussion has been fluid with the City of Police Department, so that's been an evolving discussion over probably about 8 months, 9 months. So at some point in the process, the police department volunteered to occasionally have a person on site during the evening hours doing paperwork in the community center building. That's still on the table. Is that going to be all day, every day? That is not going to be the case, but they will be there from time to time when that works for them to have a presence. And part of having the police presence is, I think what's on the cars as they go around town is get to know us before you need us, or some version of that. So, I mean, that's part of the point of having a police presence at the site. All these families are coming from different spots and difficult trauma that they've been dealing with up to this point in their life, and being able to have resources that they get to know before they actually have to need them, we think is a great situation and a great partnership. And the police department volunteered to have that type of partnership at the site. So, again, that will be fluid as to how often it is, based on, staff time availability and what's going on at the police department. But that was the purpose of how that discussion's been fluid.
Sure, thank you. I'd like to remind the Plan Commission that this is just the zone change, adding the plan development overlay to an SMU district. The general development plan and all that specific type of stuff will come in the next agenda item, and so we can discuss a little bit more of that then as well. So just to keep that in mind, that there's still more to come on this particular subject. There any other commission discussion on this motion? Having seen none, I will ask for a vote.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer? Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
Aye.
Mr. Bowen?
Aye.
Mr. Kulabali?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Chairperson Perry?
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Item 2B, General Development Plan and Specific Implementation Plan Approval for a tiny home development located on south side of West Packer Avenue. Oshkosh Kids Foundation, the owner. Chet Wiesenberg is the architect and the applicant. Have there been any site inspections by the Plan Commission? Pretty much everybody from the first one?
Yeah.
Right. I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Staff, present your summary, please.
Thank you. So this is the GDP and SIP request for the proposed tiny home development. Here's the proposed site plan. So the proposed tiny village will have 31 individual dwelling units, each 478 square feet in size. Also a 768 square foot manager's dwelling unit and a community center. The village is intended to offer independent housing to homeless families in the area. As previously mentioned, the current zoning of the SMU district does not permit residential uses, so the applicant is requesting a BSM to allow the proposed multifamily residential land use. And this location has been chosen by the applicant based on its proximity to supporting services. Staff recommends approval of the proposed BSM as this particular type of multifamily use is relatively compatible with the surrounding low-intensity commercial and open space land uses. The site will be accessed from Packer Avenue with one entrance leading to a 46-stall parking lot. The 46 stalls is under the minimum requirement based on number of dwelling units of 72 spaces. Staff is supportive of the reduction in parking as occupants will likely not own vehicles. And it's also in close proximity to city bus route system, and the applicant is offsetting that reduction by providing more bicycle stalls than required, proposing 18 bicycle stalls where code requires 4. The applicant is also requesting BSMs for reduced front and rear yard setbacks. Along the front property line, they're requesting a 9-foot front yard setback for the parking area and a 17.5-foot front setback for the building and shed nearest the street, where code requires a 25-foot setback, and they're requesting about a 4 or 5-foot setback along the south property line, where code requires a 25-foot setback, and that's for the athletic field. So staff is supportive of the reduced front yard setback as site constraints limit the ability to move the parking area and street front buildings further to the south. So again, the site constraints limit the ability to push anything further south. So staff is supporting that reduced front yard setback and also supporting the rear yard setback as it's the only structure going into that area, or actually not structure, it'd be a play field where it's kind of an open area use, and it's abutting an industrial property to the south. We'll also have a fence along that sports field, so it should not have any effects on that neighboring industrial property to the south. The plan shows a 9-foot wide pedestrian access going around the site with 2 gated accesses. And per request from Oshkosh Police and Fire Departments, the path will be wide enough at 9 feet wide to allow for emergency vehicles to access the site and service any houses along the access. And it will also be provided with underground heating so that it's able for vehicles to get down there in case there's any emergencies. The plan includes a storage shed for each of the buildings, each of the dwelling units, and that's needed to provide storage, as these are tiny homes that may not necessarily have enough storage space, and also providing 2 utility sheds for property maintenance. So there's a total of 33 accessory buildings in the site, where code allows 3 total for residential uses. So staff is supportive of the BSM to allow those additional accessory structures as they're needed for that storage area. As far as landscaping, here's the landscape plan. For building foundations, they are meeting the code requirement for points. The police department has recommended that lower profile shrubs be utilized for building foundations to allow for visibility in front of front windows. So staff is recommending that the shrubs along the front of the units be limited to 4 feet tall at maturity. For paved areas, they are meeting the total point requirements. However, they will need to reallocate some points to shrubs to meet the shrub point requirement. For street frontages, they are exceeding the total point requirement, and that will serve to offset the requested BSMs for reduced setbacks. However, they will need to add some more points for medium-sized trees, as code requires 50%, and they're short of that number. For yard landscaping, they are significantly exceeding the overall points required, and this will again serve to offset the BSMs that they are requesting. The plan does show a monument sign along the front of the property. They did not provide a plan, but kind of a placeholder for future signage, and it will be within the 25-foot setback, but staff is supportive of that reduced setback as it's going to be consistent with the front setback of the parking lot, and that will provide for visibility of the sign. And code will limit that to 5 feet tall and 25 square feet in area. Here's the lighting plan. It is meeting the 0.4-foot candle requirement for all circulation and parking areas. They are slightly exceeding the maximum of 0.5-foot candles along the right-of-way line in 2 spots and 1 spot along the west property line. And staff is supportive of that slight increase as it's needed to sufficiently light the site, and there is additional lighting requested by the Oshkosh Police Department to provide for security around the site. And increased lighting also includes motion sensor fixtures on the homes for increased security. Here's elevations for the proposed tiny homes on the bottom of the page. So staff reviewed the plans in comparison to single-family residential design standards for new homes, and the elevations are consistent with exterior material requirements for single-family homes. Here's the clubhouse elevations. The proposed exterior appearance of the community building is consistent with the exterior standards for commercial uses. Here are the shed elevations. There are 2 refuse enclosures shown on the site plan, both of which will be 6 foot tall with brick veneer, shown on either side of the parking lot. So those will require a BSM, as code does not allow dumpster enclosures to be located closer to the streets than the principal structure. However, staff is recommending that the BSM be approved as it's the most functional location for the dumpster enclosures on the site. So overall, the applicant is requesting several BSMs. They are significantly exceeding the overall landscape point requirement to offset those BSMs. And the applicant is also providing safety and security features such as enhanced lighting and emergency vehicle path to alleviate safety concerns, as noted by the police and fire departments. So staff does feel that the applicant has adequately offset the requested code exceptions, and the site will not have an adverse impact on the surrounding area. So with that, staff recommends approval of the GDP and SIP with the findings and conditions in your staff report.
All right, thank you for your report. Plan Commission, are there any technical questions for the staff? Mr. Bowen?
You mentioned that the building elevations meet the material percentage requirements. I'm sure that on a larger drawing to somebody with better eyesight, they can see it. What are those materials that are being proposed? Is that vinyl siding? Is that cement board? It's a pretty small black and white drawing, and I can't really tell what we're looking at. I believe you that they meet the requirements. I'm confident you wouldn't miss that one. I'm just curious what they are.
We're checking the specific plans here to make sure we have the right siding material noted.
Sure.
So they are vinyl sided buildings.
Okay.
Some images for you.
And is that you made the same comment regarding the community center?
Yeah, the building, the comment is specific to the community center building and materiality requirements.
Sure.
The tiny home villages do meet all of our, what would be residential
Would
standards.
be single-family residential
Correct.
material requirements. And then what are the materials on the community center?
I'm gonna wait for Chet to answer that. I don't recall off the top of my head, so I don't want to misspeak.
They're compliant.
They're compliant.
We just don't know what they are.
It's, I can get to the plan set if you give me enough time, but
No, like I said, I knew it's probably in here. I just can't read it because they're shrunk down a little bit in our package.
All right, any other questions, or do you have another one, Mr. Bowen?
I did. It was regarding the front yard setback, the 17.5-foot setback to the principal structure. I apologize. I wasn't part of the workshop prior to these when I wasn't back on Plan Commission. Has there been any discussion regarding simply reducing the number of those units by 2 to alleviate the need for that BSM to I guess just have that not be an issue?
Yeah,
I suppose that's a question for the applicant. I can ask as well. I just want to get your background.
Yeah, the applicant's goal was to get this number of overall units. That was part of their task in this project. We look at it from the planning standpoint. You know, we have districts like SR9 that can go down to a 15-foot setback. We felt 17, and really some of the plans we looked at squished the units together a little more to get out of that setback. Mm-hmm. Trying to have a minimum quality of life for these individuals and the units. We felt going a little closer there probably made more sense, just to make sure we space them out. They have a little more space around each unit. So we didn't see a lot of concern with that reduction down to 17.
I think that was my other question is, do we have precedent within other zoning classifications for a principal residential structure within that type of setback? And it sounds like you're saying SR9 would be one that would be a comparable.
Correct. Would have it even potentially even smaller front yard setback.
Right,
than
you're
this.
saying 15 on that one?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Any other technical, Ms. Shireman?
I think this is technical. Is there sidewalks, remind me, around, they're already
There is
there?
sidewalk on Packer.
On Packer there is, okay.
Okay. Other technical questions for the staff? Once again, technical questions for staff? All right, seeing none, I will open the public comment period and ask for a statement from the applicant and/or the applicant's representative.
I'm Corey Wallace with Wiesenberg Architects, 240 Algoma Boulevard. Worked on a community center design, so I could answer questions regarding that, and me and myself and our team, we'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Can you talk about the exterior finishes of the?
Yeah, based on my recollection, I believe, I'm fairly certain we're putting LP composite smart siding on there, which is very similar to what the look of a fiber cement horizontal lap siding would look like, with asphalt shingles, and then corner trim boards. So, I mean, any other questions I'd be happy to answer. That's basically what's going on.
So it's similar design and exterior finishes to like what some of the larger multifamily project community centers we have, kind of the clubhouses.
Sure. We did a project in the last few years where it was very similar to Cumberland Apartments on the west side of Oshkosh, and a lot of this is modeled around that, so it's very similar to that building. So there's a couple aesthetical changes, but other than that, it's very similar. So that'd be a good example of somebody to look at if they want a really good idea of what it's going to feel like when it's built.
Right. Thank you. At this time, I will open the public comment period to the rest of the public and ask for additional public comment on this project. Anybody wishing to speak to us about this agenda item? Is there anyone wishing to speak to us about this agenda item? Okay, having seen none, I will close the public comment period. I typically ask for a closing statement from the applicant. I'm not sure that the applicant chooses to do so at this time. So, Commission, I am looking for some action.
Make motion to adopt the recommendations and findings as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this motion? Ms. Prop.
Yeah, I was hoping that someone from the applicant would talk to us about management of the site and management of kids, let's say, relative to the dog kennel across the street. The dog kennel people are concerned. Will there be somebody on site all the time in a management basis, or how is that going to work?
So right now we have a motion on the floor, so we couldn't open it back up to them, but Plan Commission could choose to allow them back up.
I would like to do that, so I don't know parliamentary-wise. I would prefer to vote knowing that.
All right, so why don't we continue with our questions on the motion first, and then we'll call the applicant up after we're done with the questions, because more questions may arise that need to be answered. Any additional questions on the discussion on the motion?
I have one more.
Ms. Prop.
What is the space between the units? How much space?
See if I can measure it here for you. Brian, you feel free to measure as well for me.
We could hear from the applicant also, if we need to, on that.
Doesn't look like you have a dimension.
Yeah, it doesn't look like, oh, they're 17 feet. 17 feet 4 inches? 17 feet 4 inches.
All right, any other commission discussion? Thought I saw another hand that was about to go up. Mr. Mitchell?
Is this a project that you worked on, Brian? So very non-standard request comes to City Hall, and I really appreciate the creativeness, the willingness to approach this with an open mind, the support, I guess, the direction that you provided to try and find solutions. Programming in general for populations that are homeless or low income is difficult, much less when nothing that's being proposed conforms to standard language. So I commend the two of you, in particular Brian, for your work on this. I think the concerns that Cindy and the Oshkosh Kennel bring up. I've worked with Cindy Pischke and I guess both of the Cindys in the past. Ms. Pischke is well aware of some of the challenges that certain populations may pose, but I think at the same time is well aware of the significant impact that a positive, supportive environment can have on families and in particular on children. And I think that leads to what what they're trying to create here, a national model that is an example of excellence for community solutions to a really challenging problem. Bringing in outside people, you mentioned traffic and visitors from outside of the community. That's great. I think that we want to show them how proactive and creative and engaging our community can be for populations in difficult situations. So I welcome that, and I encourage you to explore possibilities should this move forward for collaboration, for further engaging the population that's present at that site, for possible quality learning opportunities, appreciation for the pets that maybe you guys have developed. This ties really closely to a current problem that the Oshkosh Area School District is having as well. They've had multiple meeting sessions on the performance of either students of color or students from low socioeconomic households. And there's significant peer-reviewed data that connects student performance with housing insecurity, and that's exactly what this group is trying to address. Providing homeless, stable housing for families in the Oshkosh Area School District who are experiencing homelessness. That is a steep challenge, and I commend them for all of their work putting together a very creative, innovative solution that can have just some of the most amazing impacts that we've been able to have on kids from that population. So I'm really excited to support this.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this motion? Okay, before we vote, we're going to ask the applicant the Oshkosh Kids Foundation, to come up and answer a few questions. I have one myself, but Kathy, the first question was yours, so if you could.
I'll have Todd Mandel join me. They're going to be co-owning the property with Oshkosh Kids Foundation, so addressed anything else that's bubbling up in people's minds. But directly to your question, Kathy, on the management. So Advocap is a partner agency. They're going to have a full-time caseworker on site, working with the families as they come in, helping them figure out what needs the families have to bring in outside resources. We got a calendar of a variety of nonprofit partners in the community. They're going to be providing programming at the community center, and that it's going to be diagnosed basically by the person from AdvoCap who's going to be there full-time. And then collectively, we will have an on-site manager that'll be full-time at the site as well, who will live in one of the units, so that person will be there, full-time. And then we also have property management contracted out to another firm for buildings and grounds, leasing activities. So we will have, multiple people there full-time for a 32-unit project, which is a bit different than most other 32-unit projects in the community. And I get there's more need from the residents here, but we'll have multiple full-time people on site.
Good, so there will be someone there to assist neighbors if they have any concerns.
Yes, my name is Todd Mandel. I'm the Executive Director for the Wisconsin Partnership for Housing Development. We're a statewide nonprofit that takes on quirky little cool projects, and that's how we ended up here. Actually, thanks to Justin. Specifically, the person that would be our employee, sort of their focus is going to be community relations and community development, bridge building, right? So both proactively getting to know the neighbors, getting to know the community, finding ways to help the community support. I mean, the folks in this project are in this community, right? So it's how do we sort of work collectively as a community to help these folks? But then conversely, if a problem arises, we want to solve it at the lowest possible level, right? And to have someone actively able to do that is important. The question about the dogs, I think you first have to accept the premise that kids from this project are going to actively be going over there to accept that there would be a problem. I don't actually accept that as a premise. There's really no data to say that the kids will just be running across the street to do that. If there is, we have a person whose job it is to sort of sort that out. But we don't anticipate that being a major problem. And the other issue that was brought up about traffic counts, the traffic count on Packer Avenue is 2,200 cars a day. It's one of the lowest traffic counts of major arteries in the city. By comparison, Highway 76, it runs perpendicular, is 16,000 cars a day, just to get a sense of volume difference. If you're wondering, 2,200 cars a day is approximately 3 cars every 2 minutes, just average. Now, obviously, that's not 100% true because there aren't 3 cars every 2 minutes at 2 in the morning, right? So it's a little more than that, but it is not. I have put projects on much greater thoroughfares than 2,200 cars a day without problems.
Mr. Bowen?
Oh, I was agreeing
good?
with Kathy's question
All right.
earlier, so I answered.
All right, any additional questions? I have one. The project has program participant requirements, correct?
Yes.
So the residents just can't hang around all day?
Correct. Yep, they will, AdvoCap will manage that process, but yes, they're actively seeking employment, seeking education, something to, because ultimately the goal here is that this is transitional housing. They move here to be stabilized, and then we get them into subsidized housing, market rate housing, something that isn't this. This is not designed to be the next permanent way station in their lives.
Thank you. Any additional questions from Ms. Davy?
Well, actually, it's for Chief Smith. Could we do that too?
Chief Smith is present, so yes.
He is happy to come forward.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Chief. I was just wondering if you could just maybe expound a little bit on why you've been in the talks with the group and what the purpose of having somebody doing paperwork there on site. Is this a protection for the inhabitants or from the inhabitants? Sort of, can you touch on that?
Let me start with your first question.
Yes.
Understanding the situation that we have with homelessness here within the city of Oshkosh, it was important for us to be involved in the planning of this particular project because there's a density associated with the project. We also understand that the clientele that are going to be living here, the residents that are going to be living here, are going to have programs in place to help them transition from where they're currently at to an end state where they're really working hard within the community and becoming productive community members. So we wanted to make sure from a CEPTED view, community policing through environmental design, that the design of the building itself meets the standards that allow us as a law enforcement agency to patrol, but also to maintain the safety of the community. The applicant has been very, very receptive to every request that we've made, as well as the fire department. They've made significant changes to their original plan. I don't believe don't quote me on this, but I don't believe there's anything that we have asked for that they've said no to. And to the point where the simplest things, such as the placement of addresses in a uniform place, because that tends to be an issue for us if we respond to calls for service, as well as simply the height of the bushes, as you heard, so that we can actually see what's going on within the residences. It's our intention to patrol. We're developing patrol plans to go through the neighborhood, not as a point of we're patrolling to protect the community from the residents, nor to protect the residents from the community, but they become part of our community. And we have to patrol that just as we will patrol anything else, apartment buildings and such things as that. We're also going to be doing programming within the facility itself to develop relationships. There is at times mistrust of law enforcement in certain pieces of our community. We want to make sure that we're addressing those. And we're a part of that community to help everybody become profitable and be a part of our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Smith. All right, so we've had opportunities to ask those questions, and we do have a motion on the floor, so we do need a vote, and we need a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Tavy?
Aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer?
Aye.
Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
Aye.
Mr. Bowen?
Aye.
Mr. Kulabali?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Chairperson Perry?
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you. On to item number 3, public hearing and a conditional use permit request for a temporary use permit extension at 1301 Knapp Street, P&Q North Kosh LLC owner, Oshkosh Defense LLC is the applicant. Have there been any site inspections of this particular parcel?
Mr. Chairman, maybe we just take a minute here, let everyone clear out.
Call it again. All right. Are there any site inspections for this particular parcel from our Plan Commission? Okay, I see none. So I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Please present your summary.
Thank you. This is a CUP request to extend a temporary use permit for outdoor vehicle storage. The subject site is part of the Oshkosh Quarry. It is surrounded mostly by commercial uses to the north, south, and west, and quarry land uses and residential uses to the east. Here's a view of the subject site. So a TUP was issued in November of 2021 for storage of Oshkosh Defense vehicles. That TUP expired in February 1st of this year. A CUP was then approved on March 8th of this year to allow extension of the TUP for storage of vehicles on the site through May 1st. The applicant is requesting approval of extension of that TUP to allow additional vehicle storage time on the site. The TUP extension is needed to allow for continued vehicle storage as they have been experiencing shipping delays. Staff is supportive of the TUP extension as unique circumstances related to production and shipping necessitate additional storage time at the site. There were TUPs for outdoor storage here in 2020, 2021, and this year, with staff receiving no concerns about the property use. So staff feels that this is an appropriate area for temporary vehicle storage. However, the total time frame for the storage should not exceed 1 year. Temporary use of the site beyond 1 year in duration would be considered a permanent use, which would require a conditional use permit and full site plan review for that permanent use. So staff is recommending a condition that all vehicles be removed from the site by November 30th of this year. So with that, staff recommends approval of the CUP with a condition that all vehicles are removed by November 30th.
Just one additional comment. We have encouraged the applicant to consider a future long-term conditional use permit. This has been as about as good of a solution as possible for this type of land use. We have not heard any issues over the years of them having two UPs at this location, or any issues during the current conditional use permit to extend it. So it seems like they're operating relatively well there with minimal impact. So we have encouraged them just to consider maybe looking at a long-term conditional use permit for this at the site.
All right, are there any technical questions? Ms. Shireman?
That sort of was my question. So, did I hear you say, from a timeline perspective, it was like recently? So I know it was 2020, it was like a year, but then it was like 3 months and then 4 months and now you're saying there's a hard stop November 30.
During basically the current process that they're using, which is extension of a TUP via a conditional use permit,
Right.
caps at 1 year.
Right.
We cannot do a conditional use permit to extend a temporary use permit for more than a year in total. To go beyond that, they would need still a conditional use permit. It's just a different conditional use permit to permanently. Yeah. And that's what we've encouraged to consider. If they've done the conditional use permit, we could issue them at a future date. They could consider that long-term conditional use
Although I'm
permit.
supportive of this, I like no issue. I mean, I have no problems with it. You know, I'm just like, are we gonna see this again in September? Or no, you know, I mean, are you firm? Are you like, we need to do something?
So at this point, it has to end with the time frame allocated in this conditional use permit. Otherwise, we've moved into in what the code would consider, a permanent land use. You could no longer do it through this mechanism.
And they know that and they understand and. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell?
How far around is the radius for notification of their request today?
100 feet from the property lines.
So pretty much largely just
It's the commercial area that's being notified.
Got it. And no responses or anything?
No.
Great.
And like I said, this is the
Yeah, I mean, it makes
third time I think we've done this.
All right, any other technical questions to the staff? All right, having seen none, I'm going to open the public comment period. Is the applicant here to make a statement?
Ryan Myers, 1220 Fairfax Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Here on behalf of Oshkosh Defense. As they spoke before, we're just trying to get a little more time at that site to store vehicles. Unfortunately, we've been having just shipping delays, but the most pressing thing is just part shortages. Actually, right now, where we're actually having to pull vehicles off the line, wait till parts show up, and then put them back on the line. So, I mean, there's a large cost that this incurs to us. So the sooner we can resolve it, the better. But, you know, we honestly just don't know when it's going to stop. And I guess if it comes to having to go to, I don't know all the terms that you were talking about before, but like other options, we may have to do that. So that's all I got.
All right, thank you. At this time, I'll ask if there's any other public that wish to comment on this agenda item. Is there anybody else in the public that wishes to comment? Once more, anybody else in the public that wishes to comment on this agenda item? All right, having seen none, I'm going to close the public comment period. I do typically ask for a closing statement from the applicant, but I don't think they're going to do that. So, commission, action is on you.
I move to adopt the finding condition as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Commission, discussion on the motion. Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
One more question for you guys. Is there any tax or cost savings or you can avoid those certain fees or taxed at a lower level if this is not actually considered a permanent parking location? Is there an additional incentive that, given the third year that we're doing this, that should be looked at?
Yeah, I can't speak to the tax side of it. I'm happy to follow up with the city assessor to judge that. I'm guessing based on the quarry nature of the underlying use, probably not, but I can verify that for you. There is a cost difference when it comes to issuing these TUPs and these CUPs. If they did make the decision to move forward with just a one-time conditional use permit, it would avoid the need for them to go back and do CUPs or TUPs in the future. So it removes that application cost of every time they go through that process. It would be a one-time cost and they would be done with it.
So they're actually paying more doing this, got it.
All right, any other discussion on this motion? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer? Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
Aye.
Mr. Bowen?
Aye.
Mr. Kulabali? Vice Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Chairperson Perry?
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Thank you. On to item number 4, recommendation to council on Oregon-Jackson Street Bridge reconstruction alternatives.
Mr. Robbie is coming up to join us if we have any questions. So we workshopped this at the previous Plan Commission meeting. Based on that discussion, I put only a few of the options here into the PowerPoint. But at this time, we are looking for a recommendation from Plan Commission on a recommendation to council. Mr. Robbie can speak a little bit about some of the discussions that have taken place between that meeting, that previous meeting, and today. I remember Plan Commission had a question about, final configuration of that area to the northeast side of the bridge, whether it be a cul-de-sac, how that finally looks out, kind of the difference between C1 and C3. So there was some follow-up on that. But I'll kind of turn over to Mr. Robbie if you want to. We have some of the images if you want to scroll through them.
Thank you. So I did have a follow-up conversation with Mr. Bertrand from the DOT, and he did indicate they're trying to be as specific as possible while they're finalizing their environmental document, but they did have some leeway, if the recommendations came back to, kind of a combination of things, that they could work within that. So I know we had talked at the last meeting about, well, could we, would they be receptive to, instead of having the cul-de-sac off of Division Street, just having the driveways go out that way. And those were some things that Mr. Bertrand did indicate that they could probably work out during the final design rather than, kind of nailing down those components right now.
The Plan Commission had also asked for specifically reaching out to City Center. I don't know if Ms. Nyforth.
Community Development Director Nyforth and City Manager Roloff met with the owners of the City Center property earlier this afternoon. A note that was given to me by Ms. Nyforth said their preference would be a rehab option. The merged development taking place across Jackson Street from City Center. Their preference was a new lift bridge, and the new property owners on the south side, their preference was a fixed bridge. So the adjacent property owners have one of everything in their preferences.
And I can elaborate a little bit. For the City Center owners, what they're most concerned about is access onto Jackson Street, kind of in the area where Beckett's is, and then they have some vacant property, kind of I think where Lakeland Care used to be, that would use that parking lot. So that was just their concern, that they want to make sure that there's adequate access into Jackson Street to get into those businesses, and then did have questions about that ramp. I think there's a couple different alternatives where the ramp, one goes all the way to Jackson and one kind of loops around like that. So more just questions of not knowing what that would look like. But that was one of their main concerns. For the folks, Merge, who are developing on that parcel right now in the corner, they were going to have a lot of commercial along Jackson. They knew that they were not going to get access from Jackson, but just the visibility. So we did meet with them, I think it was last week or the week before.
2 weeks ago.
They are talking about potentially maybe shifting around their site design a little bit to accommodate for the bridge. We did let them know that, multiple boards and commissions, that we've been discussing are recommending the fixed bridge. So I think they're preparing for that with their site design right now. We left it with that. Obviously, they were also worried about just the visibility of, being able to see those businesses. And then the new property owners on the south side of the former Morgan Door property, Geldwin property, they did say that their preference is the fixed bridge on alignment. So that one, is a little bit more easier. We can work around it since they have not started, construction yet on that site.
To Ms. Nyforth's point, some of the other boards and commissions, just for this board's information, Bike and Pedestrian Committee and Sustainability Advisory Board have both weighed in, and both have recommended some version of the C alternative, which is the fixed span bridge. Go ahead, James, sorry.
No, I'm more here to answer questions, so.
Okay. Mr. Kulali.
So the city center seems to be the only opponent to the fixed bridge, right?
Merge was also indicating they preferred the lift bridge, but I think as Ms. Nyforth indicated, they're preparing to adjust should the lift bridge be the selection.
The fixed bridge be the selection.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So what happened to the parking lot that is removed from back to?
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I'm going to go back. So
Yeah.
the alternatives that are shown here, the parking is largely reconfigured in some nature. So many mice here, I can't find the right one.
That's why I'm letting you do that.
Removal of some of the parking here would be reconstructed over here. So I believe the alternatives, and again, some of the loss of other parking reconfigured over here. The goal isn't necessarily to have a reduction of parking, but just looking at how that space can be reconfigured to meet the needs.
And I'm sorry, just to go a little bit further with that, based on the analysis that the DOT had done, the alternate C1 as shown had a 20-spot net loss, but alternate C3 had a 5-spot net gain. Based on the reconfigurations, and primarily, the pink fuchsia, whatever that color is, cross-hatching is the removal, but then there is the proposed ones shown as well. So, the non-cul-de-sac option did end up resulting in what appeared to be a net gain in parking spaces.
And what did you say the net loss was for the other?
The net loss was, based on what I got from the DOT, a 20-spot loss versus a 5-spot gain by not using the cul-de-sac.
James, you said from a DOT perspective, do we need to pick a specific alternative, or could the recommendation be high-level fixed span, like on alignment, and we could kind of work through some of the details with the ramp and the parking and everything?
Yeah, they said there was, some level of that detail can be determined during the final design. Obviously, this is so conceptual right now that it's difficult to nail all of that down before they can start the design. Going back to the discussion about the other boards and commissions, bicycle and pedestrian, their recommendation had been to do the fixed bridge without access to Jackson Street. So I think, kind of combining removing the cul-de-sac and kind of combining those two alternatives is, kind of the direction a lot of those were leaning, just to, again, recover some of that site space not tied up with a cul-de-sac, but still not get that access directly onto Jackson Street, which is a significant conflict point between vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles.
Ms. Prop, I believe your hand is up.
Yeah, I've got a question. This alternative C1 is best for parking, you just finished saying.
C1 actually had a net loss, C3 had a gain.
Okay, that was C3. The Riverwalk does go underneath on both sides?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so, but C3 does have access to Jackson, a driveway to Jackson.
Correct.
Which I think, unless I can be convinced otherwise, is dangerous. The current access from the Beckett's parking lot now, I think, is dangerous.
And that was the Bike and Pedestrian Committee's opinion as well. And that's where, as Mr. Robbie said, maybe somehow blending C3 and C1, where you have the no access of C1, but the no cul-de-sac of C3. Right. Just looking at the final configuration of that area.
So you just need us to make a recommendation for a high-level fixed span?
What we're looking for is your recommendation as a commission to Common Council, and then that would get built into the memo that we've started writing, where we're going to outline all of the various board and commission recommendations to council. Unfortunately, traffic and parking will be meeting just hours before council, so their recommendation won't be in the memo, but it will be given to council at the meeting that evening.
Okay, Mr. Kiefer.
So, I'm sorry I missed the workshop on this, but, and I don't recall what it was like years ago when we looked at it too, but, so with the high level, does the road actually start going up, it's further back, to the north and south?
Yes, so looking at the configuration, really about 75 to 100 feet north of the intersection at 6th Avenue is where, the road grade will start going up to get over the bridge, and near the intersection of Marion, Division, and Jackson is where it would tie back down again.
And if memory serves me correctly, it's approximately 11 feet higher than the existing bridge?
Yes, I believe that was the case. Can you read what it says there about Station 20, or no?
I can't.
Okay.
But if I remember when we looked at it last time, it was about 11 feet.
And we don't have any concerns over boat traffic access without having,
No, the Coast Guard has weighed into the DOT on this alternative and said that this height would be acceptable to them. It would match the navigational clearance of the 41 Causeway. So any boat traffic that currently can get under the 41 Causeway would be able to pass underneath the fixed bridge alternative.
Ms. Davy.
I just want to tell you, thank you for reaching out to the merge people and working with them on that. I'm sure you also happened to mention about the economic impact of having a fixed bridge as opposed to a lift bridge. Because
Yeah.
it would cost a lot more to make it and a lot more to maintain it, and that falls into the city's purview then, right?
We did share those different considerations that, the city is reviewing right now with the private property owners. So I think at the end of the day, they understand where the city is coming from, if we would choose, the fixed bridge versus the drawbridge, just the cost that we would have to encourage us to build it, and then what that long-term cost is to actually maintain it.
Yeah,
We're talking like double the cost in millions, right?
the capital cost differential between the fixed bridge and the lift bridge is $25 to $30 million. That cost would be borne by the city if that's what was a city decision. The annual operations cost, based on information that I've received from the DOT, there's probably a differential of between $100,000 and $120,000 a year in operational costs that would have to be absorbed into our operating budget as well.
And the other advantage of a fixed bridge is it can't get stuck open, right?
Or stuck down, yep.
Or half up, half
Or
down.
half up, half down. A lot of different combinations.
Mr. Mitchell.
Timely problem.
I may have missed this, but what was their main concerns, or why did they prefer, the city center folks, why did they prefer to have any option but the fixed?
It was more about access into their existing, building access, where Beckett's is and, where Lakeland Care used to be, because that access would go away. So they're worried about the access to get back there.
Meaning no Jackson?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, there would still be access, just not directly off of Jackson Street. It would come off of the reconfigured division.
Right.
And when we do these sorts of things, there's options for, I don't know, recognizing that and saying, well, you can put a sign here maybe, or, there's some sort of fluidity into how we operate so that we can recognize the inconvenience or the...
Yeah, we would try to work with them to make sure that, they have, that signage, to make sure that, the wayfinding signage, to make sure people knew where they were going.
Great, thank you for reaching out to everybody.
Mr. Bone, did you have a question?
Just sort of more of a, I guess, a technical question, if anything, as within our purview from a plan commission standpoint, are we encouraged to consider the financial implications and the financial piece of this, or are we charged with finding the best planning option agnostic of cost?
So this one I would say is out of your typical purview.
Right.
This isn't really a land use based decision.
Yeah, I don't
but
know
council has given us direction to ask all the boards and commissions for their opinion.
Okay.
So in this instance, for once, I'm going to say weigh everything you want.
So if that's the case, has long-range finance weighed in on any of these options? If council's encouraging everyone to do that, I guess, have they weighed in?
No.
Seems like they would be the one to weigh in.
As a gentleman on long-range finance?
I am no longer on long-range
Oh,
finance,
that's
but
right.
I can tell you that we're not a very complicated committee. The cheaper option is going to be the option. Like, I mean, I wonder.
Yeah, you don't need to sugarcoat it.
I just, sorry, my only, I'm wondering here, are any of these options viable financially beyond not doing anything in a city that sort of perennially finds itself
And a little
collecting
bit,
quarters from, the couch cushions?
a little bit to that regard, Mr. Bowen. Doing nothing is not an option. either.
And certainly as it sits right now.
Yes. But even once this current situation is
Understood.
resolved, doing nothing is not an option.
Understood.
The DOT, is going to be participating in the costs of this project. If rehabilitation is chosen, the DOT will assume all costs and retain ownership of the bridge. If a fixed level bridge is chosen, the DOT would assume all costs unless the city were to add additional things or want some aesthetic features added. And then the city would become the owner of the bridge. If a lift bridge is chosen, the DOT will contribute up to the cost of the fixed bridge, and then the city would be responsible for the rest.
And I think we're also in a unique position in a central city. I think it's kind of rare to have 3 out of the 4 kind of impacted areas be vacant right now. So I think kind of the mindset was too, if we're going to build it, let's build it,
But now-
right? Let's build it where it's going to last. And we can work with those landowners with their site design to work around it. Granted, we know city center is going to be impacted, but if we just rehabbed it for 25 years and then everything was developed on those vacant sites, then in 25 years, we're going to be back here trying to figure out how to wedge this bridge in. And, God forbid they have to take down, part of a building or something. So it was just more looking long-term also.
And I think one of the other challenges that was brought up during the Common Council workshop is, if a rehab option was selected and, to use the term, kick the can down the road 25 years, that would mean that within about a 10-year time frame, Jackson, Oregon, Main Street, and Congress Oshkosh Ave would all need to be reconstructed.
Mr. Kubali, you had a question?
Oh, I was just curious about with the bridge being closed now. Is there a plan to reassess the stats of the project?
Right now, the Department of Transportation is waiting on a gear manufacturer to get back to them when they could manufacture a replacement gear for the gears that have become too worn to operate. The fix of the current issue is not going to impact this long-term planning operation, at least from what the DOT has communicated to me at this point.
Okay.
Ms. Davy?
As far as looking at this at a planning perspective, I think that this probably does impact planning in that having a fixed bridge, when you have 4 bridges over a river, having one fixed bridge for police and fire protection at the very least seems to me like kind of a no-brainer, which is why I absolutely support the fixed span.
Okay, Ms. Shireman. Ms. Shireman?
Do we need a recommendation, a motion?
So at some point here, I will.
I want to make it, I just don't know what it is.
At some point, we will need a recommendation that says, motion to recommend option blank.
Can we say C, right? We can say alternative C?
Right, we just need to, I need to see if Councilmember Ford has a comment. He's the only one that hasn't comment beside myself.
Oh, no, thanks for the privilege. No, I actually, what Margie said, I think is really important. The idea of having a single crossing there, the only street in Oshkosh that goes all the way through town. I think there's huge value to that beyond the fact that, I'll be blunt, again, this is just me. I have 6 colleagues, but I'm voting for the lowest cost option. We can't take this on.
The memo that will be written to council will include a staff recommendation, and certainly police and fire's input is just that, for a bridge they can always get across, a fixed bridge.
So my comment on the situation is I really actually do support the cul-de-sac option, C1. And the main reason I support that is that that allows the acceptance turning of large vehicles, plows, fire trucks, semi-trucks, whereas the other options, if a vehicle were to go down that little spur, it might be very challenging for them to get out. So the cul-de-sac allows for that, that ability to turn larger vehicles into, and to get them back out if they go down that spur. So, Ms. Prop?
That's an interesting side issue that I hadn't thought about, but I would like to have us consider making a motion for alternative C3. And what you just said is you like alternative C1 because it has the cul-de-sac. But in any case, I think Riverwalk underneath both sides is essential. And I think the joining up the decent intersection with Marion Road and Division is essential, absolutely essential. And beyond that, it sounds like there's room for discussion with, do we have a C3 type of configuration for the parking? Do we have the cul-de-sac? Why? Which one is better?
And what might C2 look like?
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like there's maybe like a hybrid C1,
Yeah,
C3
yeah,
option
and,
that could potentially satisfy.
Right, and
I don't know.
does
maybe.
there have to be access onto Jackson? What that looks like from the ramp there.
In this particular case, yes, the way C3 is currently drawn, there is a ramp connection directly onto Jackson Street.
Yeah, and so what is the best access? You know, is that, even though I don't like it, if it's ramp only, then the average parking person is not gonna be going up the ramp.
Well, it's ramp only, but the DOT is also coming off of that ramp to get down into the surface lot that currently serves Beckett. So it would, if, under this scenario, if that is maintained, it would be both types of traffic trying to access off of Jackson. So, Mark, which one of these has got the little red dot? That one, okay. So right now, this configuration here where this parking is shown to be removed, that is actually a kind of a ramp coming down off of the parking ramp to get down into the parking lot. So the way this is configured, if somebody were trying to get into this surface lot, they would turn in here and come down here to get into that surface lot. So that is the way this alternative is currently drawn up. And that's one of the things that I think, in the conversations with Bike and Ped, I think they like the layout, but not the Jackson access. So that is, I want to make sure it's clear the way this is drawn right now is both of those would be accessing from this point.
Oh, okay.
And so-
I think that's the crux of the, as far as I'm concerned, issues that we don't have enough information.
Right, and I do want to remind the Plan Commission that this is a recommendation. These same staff will be present at the council meeting saying the exact same things along with our representatives, so we do.
And the DOT will have a staff member there as well.
Right, so we do have just our recommendation role. My main concern is any access from Jackson, but we can go there. Miss Davy.
I'd like to make a motion to make a recommendation for alternative C1 with the cul-de-sac.
We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
And I'm looking-
We have a, no. We do have a second as well. So is there commission discussion on the motion?
Yes.
Ms.
Go ahead,
Prop?
Go ahead, Meredith.
I thought we could just do the high-level fixed span recommendation and not choose C1 or C3. Did I misunderstand?
You could go down that road and we would have to work out the final details with the DOT. The bicycle and pedestrian, their recommendation was a high-level fixed with no access off of Jackson. They didn't necessarily pick a C1 or a C3. I believe sustainability did pick C1.
Yes.
No?
No?
Oh, yes.
Yes, C1.
So, we are getting a variety of recommendations from the various boards and commissions.
And traffic hasn't weighed in yet.
No, they will be meeting Tuesday evening next week before the council meeting.
I can't imagine they're going to encourage a crossing across a bike path and sidewalk that's 11 feet before you ever get to the street, right? They might, who
We will be
knows?
presenting it to them next week, Tuesday.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion?
But, yeah. See,
The motion is for C1. Mr. Kubali.
city center preference is C3.
City Center prefers a rehabilitation option.
Either.
None of
which,
these.
which does not accomplish any of the goals as far as the Riverwalk separation and improving some of that. So, but that is the city center's preference, was for just rehabbing the bridge, and the existing structure stays the same. It's just the mechanical portions would be replaced and
Okay,
updated.
well, to restate what I meant is, of the fixed bridge option, the one that give more access to the business is C3. This is more parking lots are available in that
There's
option.
more parking in C3 than C1.
Correct. But I don't know that we I would have to defer to Ms. Nyforth. She was in the meeting with them, but I don't know that they specifically said, well, if this is an option, we would prefer this. Kelly's shaking her head no as she's walking up.
Yeah, we really didn't get into the layout and, which preference. Is more just about access. So that'd be something that we would have to sit down with the developers, and hopefully between the DOT, city staff, and the owners, the properties, we can come together, to find a solution that all parties are agreeable to.
Ms. Prop.
My final question then, at some point, let's say we recommend this C1, and council does or does not, either C1, C3, or whatever they do, there will be a serious discussion in a few years between DOT and the city about, okay, what is the design gonna look like?
Right.
And at that point, would the plan commission have a recommending role in?
It's a valid question, and I'm not sure I have an answer for you at this time, whether or not there will be additional involvement from Plan Commission.
So looking at the DOT's schedule, they would be beginning design engineering, looks like approximately July of next year, and design engineering would go all the way through 2028 when construction would start. So certainly early in that design would be, some of the features, but, they're going to spend a lot of time on the actual structural side of it. And if we wanted to start getting into, any other add-ons, that would likely come a little bit later on. As we mentioned during the workshop, when the Wisconsin-Ohio Street Bridge was redone, the DOT had a program that was referred to as community-sensitive designs for aesthetic features. That program is no longer funded, so any aesthetic components that we would wish to add, we would have to fund ourselves. And, certainly I think that would be a very appropriate time to engage this,
I
this
think
board again.
as this process moves forward, bringing it back for workshops and discussion makes sense. Ultimately, whether there's official votes and recommendations, we'll have to see. This is a newer process for a lot of us. We have not replaced a bridge quite like this in recent time. But I think
At least those of us here haven't.
Yeah, at least those of us here. But I think, the opportunity for some workshops and discussions, I think there's definitely some opportunity for further discussions as that moves forward.
Mr. Kiefer?
I know the motion on the table right now is for alternative C1, and I'm just wondering if we want to amend that to say the high level of expand with these other cul-de-sac, no cul-de-sac, the entrance to.
I would accept a friendly amendment.
So that's one thing. And then just one other thing I want to throw in there, because I just want to be able to say it, is that I hope that, Jackson Street further north of here, I'm not sure how far, that reconstruction, I don't know if it's in the CIP right now, but that reconstruction will coincide hopefully with this project to minimize the whole disruption on Jackson Street. It's closed, don't go there for 2 years, and, but I know that street is in pretty bad condition. I don't know what the stormwater and everything else underneath it is, how that fixed, but
I would argue Oregon is probably in worse condition, and we are definitely planning on reconstructing those last couple of blocks of Oregon while this bridge is closed.
most definitely, I think that's why it wasn't done.
That is
Wasn't done a couple years ago.
That's exactly why it wasn't done then, is because at that time, the bridge was going to be under construction now. But certainly when the bridge is closed, we're absolutely looking at redoing those last couple of blocks of Oregon. We would have to look at the rest of Jackson to see how we might be able to fit that all together.
I know that, CIP goes out 5 years, so we're already looking at, 27, so soon we'll be looking at 28, 9 kind of years, so just.
We've actually gone to
Put a plug in there for
10-year
that.
planning now, so.
Okay, so Mr. Kiefert has suggested a friendly amendment. Ms. Davy has indicated she's willing to entertain that. Mr. Bowen, I'm looking at you because you have a strong history at how you word those. Suggestion on how to word that.
So I am going to ask, just to clarify exactly what you want to send to council. You made some comments with going to see with blank. I would ask for very specifically what those are. For example, Bike and Ped said option C with no access to Jackson. So if you're saying option C, which is high level fixed, I then want you to very specifically enumerate what those clauses are you would like to add to make sure we correctly get it to council. So it can be, if it's limiting access to Jackson, looking at alternatives without a cul-de-sac, whatever those are the two that I heard, so that's why I said this.
So, Ms. Davy, you're the one that has to
You're
say
looking
it.
at me?
Right.
Oh.
Right.
I'll help if I can.
I would be happy with making it high level, fixed span, and make sure the river walks underneath.
And no access on Jackson.
I personally prefer no access on Jackson, but if it will get us past this point by saying that part of this could be kicked down the road a couple of years because everybody else isn't ready to commit to that, okay. But yeah, personally, that's what I'd like, but I'll take however John wants to amend that. So did you want?
And I concur with the Jackson. I think that is just has a lot of issues there. I just don't know if it needs the cul-de-sac or if the parking's more important
Right.
versus the cul-de-sac. So that's
Yeah, I think that's what's up in the air.
So do you want your recommendation to include limiting access to Jackson?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a friendly amendment.
So I just have the two, making sure the Riverwalk goes underneath, which they do, and limiting access to Jackson.
And high level.
High level,
Fixed
yes.
span.
It starts with high level.
Okay.
All right. Is there any comment on that friendly motion? All right, I see none, so let's vote on the motion on the floor. Roll call, please.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Kiefer?
Aye.
Ms. Prop?
Aye.
Ms. Shireman?
No.
Mr. Bowen?
No.
Mr. Kulabali?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
Chairperson Perry?
Aye.
7-2.
1-2.
All
Threw
right.
me off.
Can't please everybody.
Bowen and Mayor no, so it's C with ensuring the Riverwalk goes underneath and limiting access to Jackson.
Okay, the last item, or second to last item on our agenda is the planning director's report.
Yes, you can all have the next meeting off. No, we just did not have any action items that came in for that meeting. We had one workshop. I bumped that workshop up to today's meeting, and then we will not meet on June 21st.
Take a night off.
Last item on the public agenda, adjournment.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Don't leave.
All right, we are adjourned.